Today we're going to talk about the process of cellular reproduction, sometimes also known as mitosis. I will have shown you in the class how to access these notes right here, and this is what you're going to use as you watch the video at home to take down your notes. So this you will access through Google Docs, and we'll make sure everybody has this downloaded. And these notes you may use on your quiz when you take it later in the week. Here's a couple little tricks that you can do that are going to help you with taking your notes right here. So here's your iPad, and one of the things you can do is you watch the pictures in here is you can do a screenshot. Now a screenshot you're probably familiar with already, but it's pretty easily done. You hold down the home button, and while you're holding down the home button you also hit the power button up at the top of your iPad. And when you hold those simultaneously, that will take a picture of the screen that you're looking at, particular thing that you're looking at that time. Now, what you can do with that then is something like this. And you see right here, here's my notes. And in my notes, I've taken my screenshots and put in a picture of this thing called metaphase, which we're going to talk about, and some of the notes about what's happening in metaphase. So let's begin our discussion of this process of cell reproduction, also known as mitosis. You'll notice that in the lab activities, we've been concentrating on the root tips of the onion right here. And the reason we focus on the root tips of the onion is we're focusing on growth. Remember, that's one of our 7 characteristics of life. So you can see right here, this is where most of the growth is taking place in the case of an onion. In fact, in the case of most plants, it's taking place on places such as in the roots. So we focus on the cells here in the roots, and the way that this is growing is they're increasing in number. The cells are increasing in number. But to do that, you've got to start with cells that already exist and go through this process known as cell division or cell reproduction. Now, when we look at these cells, you've looked at in the classroom, you've seen what a normal cell looks like. Normal cell is kind of rectangular or box shape in the case of onions. In the case of animals, most animals are kind of blob shaped. They may not necessarily have this nice little box shape. And they've got the nucleus right here. And the nucleus just looks like a dark round ball because of the way that we've stained it. But inside here you can see some of these are very different from the others. And this has a lot to do with this process of cell division. These are the chromosomes that we see right here, and their behavior is crucial to this whole process of cell reproduction. So let's define mitosis. This is your first vocab term that you're putting down, and I recommend you write this out because this is going to be better review and getting you ready for the quiz that you'll have coming up. Even though it is open notes, write out the definition for mitosis, which is the process of cell reproduction during which the chromosomes become visible. Now get in the habit, you can feel free to pause the video in order to allow yourself time to go ahead and take down the notes and then move on from that point. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Here are the chromosomes that we're focusing on. Now, one of the things we probably will have already talked about in class is that your chromosomes always come in pairs. Take a look right here. You can see some of the chromosomes look like other ones. Can you find a chromosome in here that looks like this one? Another chromosome that looks similar to this one? So these are called homologous chromosomes, which means matching pairs of chromosomes that are visible during mitosis. Normally you can't see the chromosomes. This is our first phase. This is what we normally see right here. And you can see this is very stringy. These are our chromosomes right here. And for our purposes, I've made them 2 different colors so we're easy to identify. So far as we know, they don't have any particular colors. You have 2 green chromosomes right here. Here's a green chromosome. Here's another green chromosome and 2 red chromosomes. They're all tangled together. And in the classroom, we will have talked about the fact that, or about why it is that you can't normally see the chromosomes. This is the way that they appear in these cells right here. These tangle of threads that are so thin that you really can't make out any specifics. So why is it that we can see them here and in here? Well, because in fact, your chromosomes are actually kind of propeller shaped. So we're going to talk about the structure of the chromosomes first, right here. So you can see again, you've got your green chromosomes right here, and you've got your red ones right here. And you can see they're different from one another, not just because of the color, but you can see this little button right here. It's in the middle on the red chromosomes, but it doesn't have to be in the middle. And you can see on our green chromosomes I've made it so it's not. So let's talk about the makeup of the chromosomes themselves. First of all, the little propeller parts that you see right here are called chromatids. And normally they're long thread-like structures. So you can see they're attached to this center part. The center part is called a centromere. These are little button-like structures near the center, but again, you notice in the green chromosome, they don't have to be in the center of each chromosome and the chromatids attached to this. So you want two more vocabulary terms right here. Chromatids, thread-like structures attached to the centromeres, and centromeres, a little button-like structure in the middle. And again, this is probably a nice screenshot that you want to take so you get the idea of what the structure of a chromosome is. But our focus is on what's happening with the chromosomes themselves. Now take a look at the difference of this picture. Look at this one. Look at this. Here's our original. What's happened here? We now have two chromosomes. This is considered one chromosome. Chromatid, centromere, chromatid. Well, now we've got two chromatids. 1, 2, 3, 4 chromatids all attached to this one button in the middle. So these are actually considered two chromosomes. Our chromosomes have doubled. They've doubled in number. And you'll remember that when we talked about the cell cycle in the notes, this happens during that S phase of what we covered. This happens during S phase. The number of chromosomes doubles. This has already happened during interphase. This has happened even though we can't see it in here. There's still long, drawn-out threads at this point that are all jumbled together, so they look solid in here. So they've already doubled in their number at this point. So here's what's happening in our interphase, and here's what you're putting down. So you want your picture of interphase. You might want to think about taking a screenshot of what interphase looks like here. And then a description of what's happening in interphase is going to go in the other block. Let's take a look again of our picture of interphase. Here's what interphase looks like. Again, you can see all the different threads here just tangled together, looking like one solid ball at this point. When we talked about the cell cycle, our G1, the G2, and the S all take place. 3 of the 4 stages that we talked about in the cell cycle take place in interphase. Chromosomes are not visible. The cell spends most of its time in interphase. So you remember we drew that cell cycle. You remember that the 4th part of the cell cycle, the one that's missing here, which one is that? Takes up a very small fraction of the total circle, the total cycle that we looked at. Which one is the one that's missing? Well, now your next stage of this process is called prophase, and we're seeing that in this picture right here. We look at it close up, compare it to interphase. Here's prophase, here's interphase. Well, what's happening here is you can kind of see this wormy looking appearance. This one's doing the same thing. This is also prophase. This is also prophase. It still has the shape of the nucleus, still has that ball shape, but what's happening is that you're starting to see the chromosomes. So the chromosomes have coiled up and started to become visible. The nucleus has started to disappear. Right here we can start to see the circle part, the outline, the edge of the circle has started to disappear. So our nucleus is breaking down. We said nuclear membrane is breaking down and it disappears because there's actually like a skin around the nucleus of the cell. And then these structures called centrioles move to opposite sides of the cell. So here's our little cartoon-like picture of prophase. Our chromosomes are now visible, and notice there's 2 sets of chromosomes. So we went from 4 chromosomes to 8 chromosomes, 2 sets attached to each of these centromeres. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all attached to these centromeres right here. And now these things right here, look what's happening. These little star-shaped structures start moving to opposite sides of the cell. Now these are only found in animal cells, and they're called centrioles. So this is your next vocab term. And this is also a picture you might want to snap in order to put into your notes right in here under prophase. That would be your picture that you're going to use. So again, here's our prophase taking place. Here are our centrioles. Now they're going to produce something called spindle fibers, which we'll see in the next phase. Why do we have dotted lines right here? Because our nucleus is starting to disappear. In our next stage, the 3rd phase of this process, now we see that happening right here. Where do you see all the chromosomes at in the cell? This one down here is in prophase. See how the nucleus is disappearing? This one's in prophase. This one's entering into prophase. These are all in interphase over here. They're still in interphase. They have their complete ball-shaped cells or ball-shaped nucleus still present. Look at where all your chromosomes are now. So what's happening is metaphase, the chromosomes are in the middle of the cell, the equator of the cell. Think of the cell as kind of ball-shaped, as it is in animal cells. They're all lined up on the equator. And now these things called spindle fibers are going to appear. They're going to grow out of the centrioles and attach to the centromeres. Watch what happens here. Here comes one. Here's our centrioles right here, here, and here. Here come the spindle fibers coming out and attaching to the centromeres of each chromosome. Each chromosome. And that's metaphase. So this is a good screenshot for you to use for your process of metaphase. Notice the nucleus is completely gone now. It's completely disappeared. And here's the equator of the cell. This is the middle of our cell. So the definition of a spindle fibers, they're thread-like structures produced by centrioles that attach to the centromeres on each chromosome. And again, so you're familiar with these are centrioles. And these little buttons on the chromosome are centromeres. Don't confuse those. And don't confuse the word thread-like with what's attached to the chromatids right here, which are attached to the centromeres. Chromatids, centrioles, spindle fibers, centromeres. Our 4th phase is called anaphase. Now look what's happening. Now you can see the chromosomes are separating from one another, is what's happening here. That means those buttons in the middle have to split. Think of it kind of like snapping a button in half. The centromeres on each chromosome splits. The spindle fibers now pull the chromosomes to opposite sides of the cell. Spindle fibers pull the chromosomes to opposite sides of the cell. Here we see that happening right here. Here's our chromosomes being pulled away from one another. Now look at what's happening. Got 2 red chromosomes here, 2 green chromosomes here, 2 red chromosomes here, 2 green chromosomes here. And this green chromosome is exactly the same as this one. This one is exactly the same as this one. So you're making sure that each side has the exact same chromosomes that you started out with way back in the process of interphase when we began this whole process right here. This is what we started out with. 2 red chromosomes, 2 green chromosomes. And now we're making sure the 2 sides right here also get 2 red chromosomes, 2 green chromosomes. Your final phase is called telophase. And again, you can see right here, see now you still make out your chromosomes, kind of like balled up hair right here. And I don't know if you can see it clearly, but if you look closely, you can see like a little thin line right down the middle right here. Little thin line down the middle. This is called telophase. Now, the cytoplasm, the actual jelly of the cell, is divided in half as a new cell membrane forms right down the middle. Okay, remember we talked about the structure of the cell. The outside of the cell is called the cell membrane, and a new one is forming right down the middle, splitting the cell in half. So it's no longer one cell, but now it's two cells. A new nucleus is going to form in each of these two cells, which we now call daughter cells because they came from one original cell, the mother cell. A new nuclear membrane is going to start forming around these right here, around the outside. So your nucleus is starting to come back. And then finally, the chromosomes start to unwind and disappear. Notice how they're not as clear here. You see, you don't see the real worm-like structures anymore as they were here in anaphase. Right here, you can see them, make them out a little more clearly. So they've started to disappear right here. So here's your three stages of three things that are happening in telophase. And here they are right here. Each cell has two of the original chromosomes, two red ones, they're still in pairs, and two green ones. Remember, there were four of them on each of these. We have four chromatids coming off of each of these centromeres earlier before it went through the division. And now we've got two cells. This is a form of asexual reproduction. These two cells are going to be identical to one another. Now you can see the line right down the middle here where they've divided. The nucleus is forming. Now our chromosomes are unwinding and disappearing. And these two cells are exactly identical. So this happens in your body in places such as the skin and in the blood. That concludes our video here. Please feel free to ask the teacher